The month of May had rolled in with heavy rains, washing the streets of Lagos clean each morning before the sun rose. Inside Chief Ronald's mansion, life went on with its usual rhythm, but beneath the surface, tension brewed. The chief's friends, Bode, Felix, and Tunde, had grown more persistent in their visits. Each time they came, they pressed harder, polishing their pitch, dangling promises of unbelievable wealth, and assuring him that the deal was risk-free. But Susan's instincts refused to be silenced. Every time she watched them lean across the table, their voices dripping with confidence, she felt her skin prickle. Something about their eagerness did not sit right with her. Yet what could she do? She was a maid. A maid had no right to involve herself in the affairs of her employer's business. Her duty was to sweep the floors, polish the glasses, serve the meals, and then disappear into the background. Still, she prayed each night. Lord, protect Chief. Do not let these men deceive him. The turning point came on a Wednesday afternoon. It had rained heavily that morning, and by noon the skies were still dark, the clouds heavy with another downpour. Susan was polishing the glass center table in the main sitting room when she heard the sound of cars arriving in the compound. She peered through the curtains. 3 familiar vehicles had pulled in: Bode's Lexus, Felix's black Prado, and Tunde's Mercedes. The trio stepped out, dressed sharply as always, umbrellas shielding them from the drizzle. Again, Susan thought grimly. They are here again. The chief was at home that day, working from his study. Within minutes, the friends were ushered in. Laughter, greetings, the clinking of glasses. Susan stayed in the background, serving drinks, her eyes lowered, but her ears alert. Soon, the men requested to speak with the chief privately in the smaller lounge near the study. Susan followed with a tray of ground nuts and peppered meat, placing it before them. As she turned to leave, she noticed the door was not fully shut. Instinct told her to walk away, but something stronger held her back. She moved quietly, positioning herself near the adjoining corridor where she could hear but remain unseen. What she heard froze her blood. Felix's voice, calm and deliberate, carried clearly through the gap. Everything is ready. Once Ronald commits the 500 million, we move fast. The documents are prepared, the accounts are set. Within weeks, the money will be gone. Susan's eyes widened. Gone? Bode chuckled, his booming laugh filling the room. Ah, my brothers, this one is sweeter than honey. Do you know how many big men in this city have fallen for less? The beauty of it is that he trusts us completely. He will not suspect a thing, Tunde added slyly. Once we withdraw the funds and split it, each of us will be set for life. And by the time he realizes, we will have vanished. Abroad, new names, new lives. Susan's hand flew to her mouth to stop a gasp. Her heart pounded violently against her chest. Felix lowered his voice, though she still heard. We must seal it soon. He is still hesitating. We cannot allow him to delay much longer. Pressure him until he agrees. Once the transfer is done, that is the end. The 3 men laughed together, a sound that to Susan's ears was more chilling than thunder. Susan staggered back from the door, her mind in turmoil. She had suspected, but to hear it confirmed, it was worse than she imagined. They were fraudsters, planning to rob Chief Ronald of 500 million naira. She leaned against the corridor wall, trembling. What do I do now? If she told the chief, would he believe her? She was only a maid. The men were his longtime friends, men he trusted, men who called him brother. If she accused them, what if he thought she was lying? What if he dismissed her, or worse, threw her out? But if she kept silent, he would lose everything. She thought of the chief's kindness, of the day he told her, I value staff who use their brains as much as their hands. She thought of how he treated his workers with respect, how he greeted her each morning. Could she watch him walk blindly into ruin? "No," she whispered fiercely. "I cannot." Her entire body shook with fear, but beneath the fear was a steely resolve. She could not remain silent. That night, Susan lay awake in her small room, staring at the ceiling. The rain tapped against the window, but inside her heart, a storm raged louder. How do I tell him? When? What if those men find out I overheard them? They could harm me. She turned restlessly on her bed. She thought of her family back in Benin, her parents, her siblings. If she was harmed or dismissed, what would become of them? But she also thought of the chief. 500 million naira. The figure was staggering, enough to destroy even a wealthy man's foundation. Finally, in the stillness of the night, she whispered a prayer. "Lord, give me wisdom. Let me know the right time, the right words. Help me to be brave." Only then did sleep come, light and uneasy. The next morning, Susan decided she could not delay. She waited until the chief was alone in his study, reviewing documents. Her hands trembled as she knocked lightly on the door. "Come in," he said. She stepped inside, bowing slightly. "Good morning, sir." "Ah, Susan," he said with a faint smile. "You are early. How is the house this morning?" "Everything is fine, sir," she replied, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. She hesitated, then said, "Sir, may I speak with you about something important?" The chief looked up from his papers, surprised. "Important? What is it?" Susan clasped her hands tightly before her. "Sir, I know I am only a maid here. I know it is not my place to speak of business matters, but my conscience will not allow me to remain silent." The chief frowned slightly, curiosity piqued. "Go on." She swallowed hard. "Sir, yesterday, when your friends were here, I overheard something. I was not eavesdropping intentionally, but I was close by when they spoke. Sir, they are not planning what they told you. It is not business. It is fraud. They intend to take your money and disappear." The words tumbled out in a rush, her voice shaking yet firm. The chief's eyes darkened, his expression unreadable. He leaned back slowly in his chair. "Susan, do you understand the weight of what you are saying?" "Yes, sir," she said, her chin lifted. "And I would not say it if I was not certain. I heard them with my own ears. They said once you transfer the money, it will be gone. They laughed about how easy it would be because you trust them." Silence filled the room. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed louder than ever. Finally, the chief spoke, his voice low. "Susan, if this is true, you may have just saved me from disaster. But if it is not—" He trailed off, his gaze piercing. Susan met his eyes without flinching. "Sir, I know what I heard. I am willing to accept whatever punishment you give me if I am wrong. But I beg you, do not invest with them until you are sure." The chief studied her for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You are brave, Susan," he said quietly. "Braver than many. I will look into this." Relief flooded her chest, though fear still lingered. She bowed deeply. "Thank you, sir." As she turned to leave, she heard him mutter under his breath, almost to himself, "If this is true, then I have been dining with vipers." The days that followed were tense. The friends returned, as expected, pressing harder than ever. But this time, Susan noticed something different. The chief listened, but his eyes were sharp, his questions pointed. He was no longer the relaxed host, but a man testing every word they spoke. Susan stayed silent, her heart in her throat each time they visited. She had done her part. Now it was in the chief's hands, but deep down she knew one thing. Whether or not he believed her fully, the truth was about to come out. Chief Ronald Okafor was a man of experience. In his 52 years of life, he had seen the best and worst of people. He had built his fortune carefully, brick by brick, from a modest shipping company to a conglomerate that spanned real estate, oil servicing, and imports. He knew deceit existed in business, but he prided himself on his ability to recognize it. Yet now, sitting in his study after Susan's revelation, he felt a deep unease. Could it be true? He wondered. Could Bode, Felix, and Tunde, men I have called brothers for over a decade, be plotting to rob me? He recalled their laughter, their endless praise, their insistence that the deal was foolproof. He remembered how they had boasted of committing their own money, though he had never seen proof. Most of all, he remembered Susan's trembling voice, her eyes steady as she said, "I know what I heard. I am willing to accept any punishment if I am wrong." That kind of conviction was not easily faked. "No," he murmured to himself, "I will not dismiss this. I will test them." The very next day, the chief summoned his accountant, Mr. Adeyemi, a loyal man who had managed his finances for over 15 years. He closed the door of his study before speaking. "Adeyemi," he said gravely, "I want you to prepare a dummy transfer slip. Make it look like 500 million naira has been scheduled to leave our accounts. I want it to appear official, but do not move a single kobo. Do you understand?" Adeyemi blinked in surprise. "Sir, may I ask why?" "Because I suspect my so-called friends are not what they claim," the chief said coldly. "This will confirm it." Adeyemi nodded. "Consider it done, sir." 2 days later, when the friends came again, the chief greeted them warmly. Over pepper soup and wine, he said casually, "Gentlemen, I have decided. I will commit 500 million to this project. My accountant has already set up the transfer. By tomorrow, the money will be on its way." The effect was immediate. Bode's eyes gleamed with barely concealed greed. Felix's lips curved into a satisfied smile. Tunde almost spilled his drink in excitement. "This is wonderful news, my brother," Bode exclaimed. "You will not regret it. This is the beginning of a new era for us all." "Yes," Felix added smoothly. "Once the funds arrive, everything will move swiftly. You will see results within weeks." But behind their polished words, the chief saw something else. Hunger. Desperation. He masked his own expression with a smile. "Good! Then let us celebrate tonight. Tomorrow, the journey begins." Later that night, long after the men had left, the chief's private investigator arrived at the mansion. He was a quiet, meticulous man named Inspector Balogun, retired from the police force but still sharp as ever. "You asked me to look into those 3 men," Balogun said, handing over a thick file. "The findings are disturbing." The chief flipped through the pages. His heart sank with each revelation. Mr. Bode had been involved in a failed investment scheme in Port Harcourt 3 years earlier, where millions had vanished and angry investors were left in tears. The case had never gone to court because Bode fled before the matter escalated. Mr. Felix had several shell companies to his name, none of them producing tangible results. He was known in certain circles as a smooth talker who lured wealthy men into bogus ventures. As for Mr. Tunde, he had lived in Ghana for 2 years under a different name, after being accused of swindling a businessman in Accra. "These men are professional fraudsters," Balogun concluded. "They work together, they flatter their victims, and once the money is in their hands, they disappear." The chief closed the file, his jaw tightening. So Susan was right. "Yes, sir," Balogun said simply. "If you had transferred that money, it would have been gone by tomorrow." The chief exhaled slowly, anger and relief mixing in his chest. "They almost had me. If not for that girl—" He shook his head. "Balogun, thank you. Leave the rest to me." On Saturday evening, the friends arrived once more, expecting to finalize their plan. They walked into the mansion with confidence, laughing, already imagining the money in their pockets. The chief welcomed them into the sitting room. Susan, as usual, moved quietly, serving drinks. Her hands trembled slightly, but her face remained calm. She knew the moment of truth had arrived. "My brothers," the chief began, "I am glad you came. Tonight I want us to discuss the final details." Felix leaned forward eagerly. "Yes, Ronald. Once the money is confirmed, the suppliers will begin shipment immediately." "Yes, yes," Bode said, nodding vigorously. "This is the chance of a lifetime. We must move fast." Tunda added with a grin, "By the end of this year, you will be twice as wealthy." The chief leaned back, his eyes cold. "Tell me, my friends, do you take me for a fool?" The room fell silent. Felix frowned slightly. "Ronald, what do you mean?" The chief slammed his hand on the table, making them jump. "Enough of this charade. I know everything. I know about the failed schemes, the shell companies, the false names. I know you plan to take my money and vanish like thieves in the night." Their faces drained of color. "Who told you this?" Bode stammered. "Who has been poisoning your mind?" "No one poisoned me," the chief snapped. "I have eyes, I have ears, and I have investigators who know the truth. You came here, calling me brother, sharing my table, drinking my wine, and all the while you plotted to rob me." Felix tried to recover, his voice smooth. "Ronald, you have been misled. Someone is feeding you lies." The chief stood, towering over them. His voice thundered, "Get out of my house, now! And if you ever step foot here again, I will ensure you rot behind bars." Security guards appeared at the doorway instantly, responding to the bell he had rung earlier. The three men, now pale and shaken, were escorted out of the mansion, their protests falling on deaf ears. Susan, standing at the corner, watched the scene unfold with quiet relief. The danger had passed. The truth was out. That night, after the mansion had quieted down, the chief summoned Susan to his study. She entered nervously, bowing slightly. "Sir, you sent for me." "Yes, Susan," he said, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. He gestured for her to sit, and though she hesitated, he insisted. For a moment, he studied her in silence. Then he said, "You saved me." Susan blinked. "Sir? If not for you, I would have lost everything. Those men would have stripped me of 500 million naira, and perhaps even more in the future. You risked your place, perhaps even your safety, to warn me. Do you realize what that means?" Susan lowered her eyes. "Sir, I only did what was right. I could not stand by and watch you be deceived." The chief leaned back, shaking his head in wonder. "Courage and loyalty like yours are rare. You are no ordinary maid, Susan. You are family." Her eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. A week later, the chief called a meeting in the mansion's sitting room. The staff gathered, curious. Susan stood among them, confused. The chief cleared his throat. "Today, I want to honor someone in this house, someone whose courage saved me from ruin." He turned to Susan. "Come forward." Susan stepped forward slowly, her heart pounding. "This young woman," the chief continued, "risked everything to tell me the truth. She exposed men who would have destroyed me. For that, I owe her more than words." He handed her a brown envelope. "Inside are documents. A plot of land in Aja, yours, and not just land. I will build you a house there, a place you can call your own." Gasps filled the room. Susan's eyes widened in shock. "Sir? A house?" "Yes," the chief said firmly. "You deserve it. You have been loyal, honest, and brave. It is time you reaped the reward." Tears spilled freely down Susan's cheeks. She knelt before him. "Sir, I do not know how to thank you. You have changed my life." The chief lifted her gently to her feet. "Stand tall, Susan. You have earned this with your integrity. One day, you will tell your children this story, and they will know their mother was a woman of courage." The staff applauded. some wiping tears from their eyes. For Susan, it felt like a dream come true. Months later, the house in Aja stood proudly. A modest but beautiful two-story building, painted cream with blue roofs, surrounded by a small garden. On the day she received the keys, Susan wept openly, her heart overflowing with gratitude. She walked through the rooms, touching the walls, whispering prayers of thanks. "This is mine. After all the struggles, this is mine." Her family traveled from Benin to celebrate. Her parents, overwhelmed with joy, blessed the chief again and again. Her younger siblings ran through the house, laughing, calling it our new home. Susan stood at the doorway, watching them with a smile. For the first time in her life, she felt secure, rooted, and free. She knew the journey was not over. She still dreamed of returning to school one day, of completing her education, perhaps becoming the teacher she once aspired to be. But now, with a home of her own, the possibilities stretched wide. Back in Ikoyi, Chief Ronald often thought of that night when Susan came trembling into his study. Her words had saved him. To his associates, he often said, "Loyalty is not found in wealth or status. It is found in the heart. That girl is proof." Whenever he visited her new home in Aja, he was greeted not as a boss, but as family. He would sit in the garden, sipping palm wine with Susan's father, while Susan and her mother prepared meals inside. It was in those moments that the chief felt the richest, not in naira, not in land, but in the knowledge that trust and gratitude could forge bonds stronger than gold. As the years passed, the story of Susan's bravery spread beyond the mansion. In the neighborhood, people said, "Have you heard of the maid who saved her boss from fraud? He built her a house." To many, she became an example, a reminder that honesty and courage could change destinies. And to Susan herself, the moral was simple. She told it to her siblings, her friends, and anyone who asked, "Always speak the truth, even if your voice shakes." Loyalty and honesty may not make you rich overnight, but they will open doors you never dreamed of. The story teaches us that honesty and courage can change destinies. Even those in the lowest positions can become heroes when they choose to do what is right. Greed and deceit may shine for a while, but they always end in shame, while loyalty and truth bring lasting honor. Susan's bravery shows that speaking out, even when afraid, can save lives and fortunes, and that integrity is more valuable than wealth itself. Thank you for watching this story on Afrotales TV. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and share with friends and family. We have more beautiful stories coming your way, so subscribe and stay tuned. See you in the next one.